Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Maverick News channel. Great to have everyone here. Hello, Maverick family. Thanks to Kevin Michalizzi, our Maverick News contributor in Crimea, we were among the first, if not the first, anywhere in the world to report on this Russian ship that was attacked and sunk by Ukraine. It's a landing vessel, and it's a significant development in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And as I say, Maverick News, thanks to Kevin Michalizzi and his hard work overnight, was there on scene. We got the information as it was happening. The explosions were heard very, very early in the early morning hours in Crimea, only about 2 kilometers from where Kevin lives in Crimea, and he was instantly uploading video updates to us. And we have footage now released of the actual attack on the vessel. Russian authorities so far not really saying too much about it, which is customary in a situation like this for Russia. They don't usually speak very much, if at all, about their losses. And there are, certain rules in place for journalists over there that we are not restricted by here. So we will bring you all of the information, and I'll explain during the course of the program why that story really gives us an indication that these predictions, forecasts of where this war is headed have been really wrong and have been for a long time. And I'll tell you more or less where I think it is going. I'll give you my own assessment based on this new development, this new information, and this new display of resolve from NATO, Western countries, in the face of a mounting information war. Stay with me, all that and more coming up right here on the Maverick News channel.
We are Mavericks. We say no to the Trudeau and Biden New World Order. And to bugs. Because bugs are creepy and gross. And people should not eat bugs. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Hey, no! To bugs!
Another big story that we actually, we were there breaking the story, if not the first in the world, among the first for sure. It was so fresh, there was no video anywhere. When we first got word from Kevin over in Crimea that he had heard explosions, got me up in the middle of the night here, early morning there, and he started sending in video reports from the scene as he raced down to assess the situation. And we're going to have another interview with Kevin. We had him on earlier this morning and then again this afternoon, and we will have him on again momentarily to bring us up to date on the latest information. But before we go there, I will show you what it is we're talking about. This is footage of the Cesar Kunikov, and this is the ship we're talking about. I did share this video earlier today. I'm going to turn the audio down. You don't need the audio. It's just distracting. Okay, let me bring this up. This is a landing ship. This is footage from some years ago, showing you what it looks like. And you'll see that the front end opens up and they use it to bring in soldiers, heavy equipment. They can land right up on beaches. It's also an armed vessel. And you'll see here that it opens up in the front. Again, this is the ship that was targeted by drones overnight by Ukraine. A significant development. And it comes as the U.S. Senate yesterday passed a $95 billion military aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and U.S. NATO activities in Taiwan. So that gives you a sense of how big this ship is. And in a moment you'll see, once these soldiers clear out, they will start unloading or driving out in armored vehicles. Now, at first it was difficult to know what information was factual, what wasn't. As you know, there's a lot of fake news going around. It's difficult sometimes to determine even if video is real or recycled, and I was very worried about that in the early morning hours when this story first broke, because we were not getting any kind of official confirmation one way or another from either Ukraine or Russia. But I knew with certainty that we were dealing with some sort of a substantial attack, because Kevin had personally heard the explosions and had seen with his wife a fireball. So this ship was attacked with drones. It appears they are a style of drone or a type of drone that is designed to fly very close to the surface of the water. It hit the ports where these drones managed to hit the port side of this vessel, doing substantial damage, and it did sink. Now, the word that we have is the 300 approximately crew members aboard are all safe. They were able to get off the ship and onto a rescue vessel before it went to the bottom. And when we speak to Kevin, I'm sure we'll learn a little bit more about why this is significant, the geography, why the geography is significant here. And that's because this war in Ukraine is not just a land-based war. It is very much a naval battle because of the ports and its strategic location. That is also why Russia values Crimea so much. It's because of where they dock their naval fleet. Here's a picture of the ship that was sunk. Again, this is not, it's not an aircraft carrier. It is not a battleship, but it is still a significant loss for Russia. And perhaps most important for Ukraine is that it is a public relations win. a propaganda or information warfare win that they badly need right now, because even though the Senate passed that $95 billion military aid package, it still has to pass in the House. So there's one more hurdle for it to clear. And we know the Republicans and Donald Trump are opposed to approving it, which is very interesting to me to see this divide in support. But that is the reality that Ukraine is facing now. Will they be able to push it through? I would say it will be easier for them to have that funding approved now, those who want it, because of this. This is now going to give Ukraine and those who support the war effort on the NATO side ammunition to go into this next vote with and say, hey, all we have to do is provide the money, provide the aid, provide the support, and Ukraine can actually win this battle. Now, I'll also say that the reason this is significant is because this shows us that this war is far from over. We keep hearing from military analysts and pundits. We've heard from the very beginning, depending on which side they seem to support, that the conflict would be over quickly. The other side doesn't stand a chance. We're told over and over again, this thing will be over in a matter of weeks or maybe months. And that's the narrative that is spun up repeatedly. And yet, here we are, nearly 3 years into it, and there's still bloodshed. And now we're seeing this story, which runs in direct contradiction, frankly, to all of the predictions of an early end and an easy Russian win that we've been hearing over and over again. This indicates that Ukraine still has resources and resolve. And soon, it appears, they'll have billions of additional dollars in funding. And unfortunately, that all means that there's going to be continued bloodshed, loss of life, and it's going to absolutely have an impact on us here in North America indirectly as well, because it's going to impact our economy. Kevin will dig into all of that and more when he joins us here shortly. We do also have footage now of the actual attack. This was shot from a submarine. And that in itself is significant, and we'll be talking to Kevin about that. It's significant because this may be actually a NATO sub. And if NATO is sending in resources and personnel to continue this conflict, things get a little bit more complicated, because now you might be using not Ukrainian soldiers, but soldiers from NATO countries, and even maybe vessels that are flagged and attached, associated with NATO countries, not Ukraine. I don't know, but it seems that that might be partly the case here. And even the drones themselves, I'm seeing tonight conflicting information coming out. On the one side, we're seeing that NATO is saying that the drones that were used in the attack were manufactured in Ukraine. But there are other reports coming out suggesting that the drones might actually be NATO issue or manufactured in a NATO country. And Kevin will give us that information as well when we speak to him when we come back. But here's the footage released by Ukraine of this ship being hit by this drone. It was being monitored on video with what appears to be a periscope mounted camera. And here we go. This is what it looked like. Choppy water, bouncing around, a little bit difficult to see, but there's the ship. And there it is again. And it looks like maybe this is, this could be video footage from the drone itself. I'm not sure, but definitely going back to or coming from what appears to be a submarine. And there was also an aircraft in the area, or maybe even two. Yeah, see, there it is, and there's the explosion. Massive fireball. And I think that explosion is the result of maybe the cargo that was being carried, not necessarily just as a result of the drone strike. And the reason I say that is because there are also images of a rescue vessel that came into the area to get the. And that's a shot from the drone itself, I think. Right up close to the vessel. As you can see, it's getting closer and closer. Yep. And so, clearly, this conflict not over. All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back on the other side, Kevin Michalitzi will join us from Ukraine with the latest information on this attack on a Russian ship that has resulted in that vessel being sunk. I'll be right back.
Feel the vibrations. Our quest continues. The truth is out there. We are Mavericks.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now, at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program. For your mind.
Kevin, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for the work you're doing, for the updates overnight, and for coming back again now to bring us up to date. This attack in Crimea, where should we begin? I guess bring us up to date on what's the latest information you have.
Well, the latest information I have from a source in the government is, although this has not been officially announced by the Ministry of Defense of Russia, the ship was sunk. It was sunk by a single strike from a British drone, sea-based drone. At the time, there was a NATO aircraft that was circling above where the ship was hit. Now, was it a NATO aircraft with a Ukrainian pilot? I don't know. But it was a fighter jet. The drone struck the ship, and it started to sink. It sank slowly, but all 300 crew members were rescued. The command of the ship has been taken into custody for questioning about how, with their radar systems, they could not have seen a drone in the area, how they could not have noticed a submarine in the area, and how they could not have noticed the airplane flying around up there. So, at the time, there was also surveillance drones from the U.S. flying. There was a surveillance plane from the U.S. flying south of us. And, so there's questions about how the ship was struck. It was struck off the... Oh, go ahead.
These are important details, and I think we should come back to these, because what you're saying, some of what you're saying, I think, could be key pieces of information that could lead to a broader conflict. But let's just backtrack a little bit and then just tell us then, now that we know kind of what the latest situation is, tell us how this began for you, because you were one of the first people to be alerted to this because you heard the explosions.
Yeah, I was up with my wife at 5:30 this morning. We were planning to go to the city of Simferopol from the Yalta region, and we heard a big boom, looked out the curtains, and there was a giant fireball off the coast of, it's a village, it's called Simis, and it's just a couple of kilometers from where we live. We could actually see the fireball. We saw the fighter jet circle it and then fly off. And shortly after that, we heard 6 or 7 more large explosions. And at the time, we were debating if it was a missile launch from a Russian ship or a strike. But we did not see any more fireballs. We found out later that there were 6 drones also incoming to the same area. And it was the Crimean air defense systems which shot down the 6 drones. So that was how it started for us. We drove over to the city, since we have to drive past there anyway to get to where we were going. Tried to get down in there. We're not allowed. There were military trucks going down, fire trucks, and at this point we understand that they were rescue crews for the crew.
I see. And so we don't really know for sure yet if there were any injuries or even casualties officially, because we're still waiting for information from the Russian authorities. Is that correct?
Well, Russia officially will not make a statement about this. It is up to the Russian Ministry of Defense to make any announcements during the special military operation. I have had it confirmed to me by a Russian official that there were no casualties. All 300 crew members were evacuated from the ship and the crew.
Okay. So this ship, can you tell us a little bit about it? It's some sort of a landing vessel?
Yeah, it's a large landing craft, and what its purpose is they can actually bring it right up to the shore. The front end comes down. Earlier today, you did a video that actually showed it in operation, and it unloads troops tanks, heavy weaponry like artillery right onto a shore. That's why it's called a landing ship. This particular ship, the Cesar Kunikov, was built and launched in 1986 from Gdansk, Poland, at a cost of about 2 billion rubles in today's dollars, 21 million in US dollars. The ship itself carries an armament of two 122 millimeter Grad launchers and either two 57 millimeter guns or an artillery bank. So one or the other. This particular ship was damaged in 2022, right after the launch of the special military operation in Berdansk, which is right next to Mariupol in the Azov Sea. And in that attack on the ship, the commander was killed. He died a few days later. It took them a while to fix it because they couldn't get spare parts because of sanctions. It was put back into service. It was repaired in Sevastopol, put back into service, and now sunk.
The geography here is important because this is happening in a key area where the Russian naval fleet needs to navigate. We're talking about, where Russia is able to keep its vessels in port. I think that, since the beginning of the conflict, we've seen Russia kind of move some of its ships around. Can you speak to that? Why is this important geographically?
Well, up until recently, the ships were harbored in the Sevastopol Bay. But because they had a couple of ships in the repair docks struck by drones, and the Ukrainians were shooting at Sevastopol trying to hit the ships all the time, they actually rebased them in Novorossiysk, which is to the west of us on the other side of the Kerch Strait. This particular ship, why it was where it was, there's no telling. Simys is not quite the southernmost tip of Crimea. The southernmost tip is Feroz, which is just a few miles away. So it's almost the very southern tip. We have seen Navy ships fire missiles towards Ukraine from the same location, though. So we don't know what it was carrying. Was it hauling munitions to Sevastopol, or just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time?
So, well, we just saw yesterday that in the U.S., the Senate passed a $95 billion military aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and to build up
Taiwan.
the military presence in Taiwan. Do you think this attack is connected to that in terms of public relations at all?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think the US and UK militaries were involved in this, and the main goal was to get a big strike and to be able to go to the House of Representatives in the United States, who are claiming that they are not going to pass it. The House Speaker has said he won't even bring it to the floor, but the Democrats are trying to bypass him. But by bringing a big propaganda piece to the U.S. House and saying, see, if we give Ukraine more money, more weapons, then they can retake Crimea. Now, it's a propaganda piece. I'm expecting Russia's typical is about 48 hours after a strike like this, they will strike Ukraine massively. So I don't think it's going to do anything but maybe dislodge some money from the United States. And the problem is even if that money is given by the Congress, the full Congress, most of this money is going to pay for building new weapons and new ammunition. Some of the ammunition may go in a few months, but most of what will be built will be new things that'll take several years to build, and they will actually replenish the U.S. stockpile in the end, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I've been researching that end of things, and what I'm getting from this attack is that, unfortunately, the conflict is not over. This
Right.
is something that's going to drag on longer. The U.S., NATO, I think they're determined to continue to pump resources into this. I've seen, you don't hear much about it, but manufacturing of armaments here, it has ramped up over the past year, even year and a half. And my take on it is that the U.S. has more munitions than people realize. So I think this is
Yeah.
likely to continue for an extended period of time, and that unfortunately means we're looking at more bloodshed.
Yeah, we hear a lot of people for the last year and a half now saying this conflict will end in a couple of months. Well, as we can see, it hasn't. I don't think it is going to. Everyone talks about how the U.S. munitions have been depleted, the European munitions have been depleted, and I don't believe that for a minute. Every time they say the United States has nothing more to give, they find some to give to Israel, or some more weapons to give to Ukraine or Taiwan. Where are they getting them from if they don't have any left?
Yeah, I know that I've discovered that they've been quietly ramping up production of shells and other
Yeah.
munitions in factories in both Canada and the U.S., especially in the U.S. And there's some places around, steel towns where the steel industry is, where they're manufacturing a lot more than people realize. I suspect as well there's more money being dumped into this than people that are seeing as well. So that's something that I think is of real serious concern.
I can guarantee that. I mean, the government, particularly the U.S. Department of Defense and the CIA, use a lot of what they call black sleeve funding, which is money that is not on the books. It just magically appears. And quite honestly, what currently drives the economy in the United States and probably Canada is the military industrial complex. It's keeping our politicians rich because they're all invested in it. They're on their members of the board. So it makes them money. It allows them to hire people and keep people employed so that inflation isn't as painful in the United States and Canada as it may be in, much of the European Union.
Yeah, definitely. And I can tell you as well, just an observation, just part of, what I'm basing my comments on is I've seen billboards in my hometown where they're hiring to put people to work in a factory where they make light armored vehicles. So
Sure, there you go.
They're ramping stuff up there. They have been for the past year. They are, if anybody wants a job, they can get a job right over there, and it pays
Yeah.
well. But I find it honestly, personally, very distasteful when I see the politicians stand up at a podium and talk about how this is good for the economy, as though that should be a consideration at all when we're talking about war. But they do it. I've seen
Lives.
them do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. But that's what human beings are like, I guess. Now, just to kind of pivot back here to, your references to the drones and the aircraft and whether, these might be NATO resources that are being deployed. That's a significant thing. That's important because if NATO is getting directly involved in this conflict, if there are fingerprints on there, then that I think might be a very risky thing. What's your view on that?
Well, NATO has been involved in it for a while. we always have a relatively good idea of when there's going to be an attack on Crimea because we've got all the surveillance drones flying around just out of the territorial waters of Russia. So we do see this quite often, particularly the US and Great Britain. But the British drones, they're actually, this is kind of like when they accuse Iran of selling drones to Russia. The United Kingdom sends parts to Ukraine, they assemble them there, they put a different name on it, but they are being, guided by NATO forces. Now, I was also told by, again, an official, this is not confirmed by the government whatsoever or the Ministry of Defense, that the submarine was NATO as well. So, dangerous ground that we're treading on.
Yes, because if this is happening, if NATO is like really directly involved like that, if that submarine was right there and was directly involved, if that was a NATO aircraft with a NATO pilot in it, then that is like a further escalation, and Russia is likely to respond with further escalation, and maybe with escalation into other NATO countries. If they hit one of these official NATO countries, not this pseudo NATO country of Ukraine, which is not officially a NATO country, then they then it's attack on one is an attack on all, and we could be into a really dangerous situation, right?
Yeah. This is why I think the command of this ship are being questioned, because whether it was a NATO submarine or not, how did it get that close to be able to take video that you published earlier showing it? Mm-hmm. And if that submarine was in what Russia considers its territorial waters, now first, NATO will claim that it isn't Russian territorial waters, it's Ukrainian at best, or international waters. But Russia, because they're at a time of war, have extended their territorial waters out legally, as long as you assume that it is Russian territorial waters. If that submarine was in it, it means that, they're open to being attacked. Now, it's kind of like that drone they shot down a year and a half ago. Well, they're going to be very careful in starting a direct conflict with NATO, even in that case. But I don't think it will go unanswered.
Mm-hmm. Now, what have you seen any kind of response, a military response yet from Russia? You say that you expect that they'll hit back hard. Has there been anything yet that you've been aware of? Not directly related to this. I did see an attack up in the Avdiivka area where the Ukrainians tried to attack the Russian forces, and they unleashed a massive bombardment of cluster bombs and took out, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm told it was somewhere around 1,500 Ukrainian soldiers. Now, some people are saying this was a response. I don't know for sure. I have my doubts because, like clockwork, Russia will wait a couple of days before they do anything. And as what happens is the Ministry of Defense will consult with Putin and his cabinet, and Putin will decide what the best response is. But I'm even seeing in some very reliable Ukrainian sources that they are expecting that their maritime and infrastructure will be struck sometime in the next couple of days. I was going over a list of ships that have been lost, and both sides have lost quite a few ships in this conflict. Until I went and actually looked for the list, I really was not aware how integral the the naval aspect of this has been.
Yes.
Obviously, this is also why this attack overnight is so significant. Can you talk about why the the naval aspect of this is important?
Well, I think the biggest thing as far as Russia is concerned is they early on tried to eliminate the Ukrainian Navy. Now, they did eliminate a good portion of it. All of these attacks against Russia are being done with sea-based drones. Now, the drones tend to be propaganda for Ukraine. They aren't hitting significant ships. You know, a landing craft, it's expensive. Who knows what it was hauling, if anything, but they're not hitting the missile launching ships. This particular ship they sunk can shoot something like, one broad missile every 5 seconds. But we have watched Russian Navy ships not too long ago, before they moved everything off to Novorossiysk, out there firing Iskander missiles. And they're firing these missiles from the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea. So, it is a valid target for Ukraine. It's something they should probably attempt to sink. But their ship, everything they've sunk thus far have been a small landing ship, large landing ship, the Moskva, which, was a battleship, but, they aren't hitting significant targets as far as what will happen in the special military operation.
Yeah. So as I look at the calendar, we're approaching the 3rd anniversary of the beginning of this escalated conflict.
Yes.
And again, we heard from the beginning many predictions that this would be over quickly, both sides making predictions like that. But here we are 3 years later, and it is still dragging on. What are your thoughts on that?
The same guys who have been predicting that for the last 3 years are still predicting that. I think it's going to drag on for a while. How long? I can't really make a guess on that. Russia is making significant advances. Now we have this new general in place, and he's called the Butcher of Mariupol, and he was given that name by his own men because he ran them through the meat grinder, wouldn't allow them to withdraw. But I'm seeing reports both from the Ukrainian side and the Russian side that they have men like in Avdiivka. They've lost 30% of their soldiers because these men are moving to the other side. They're surrendering, going to Russia, and many of them are actually fighting on the Russian side against the Ukrainians. So they've made significant advances there. They cut that city in half. They've cut off the supply road. Now, Ukraine tries to make it sound good. Well, we have some, back roads we can use, but they've got rain, snow, warm weather, and they have a hard time moving heavy stuff through those areas. And Russia is making, a kilometer and a half into those areas in single days. So they're just running all over there. Now, there's word the Ukrainian general has moved significant forces there to attempt to defend the city. He refuses to surrender the city. Zelensky doesn't want to surrender the city. And this is where the conflict with Zaluzhnyi came in, as Zaluzhnyi didn't want his men there. He wanted to surrender the city and, retreat. So I think we will see big gains here in the near future. However, I have heard from guys on the front lines up in the Donetsk and Lugansk areas saying that they do have some issues up there. They do have some minor gains by the Ukrainians. They get hit hard. They hit back. So, you can't necessarily listen to everything you hear in the news.
Yeah, no, I know that Avdiivka has become a central part of the conflict right now. The town, I guess, is almost empty, but we're also seeing that both sides are digging in. They don't want to give any ground there. It must be a strategic location for both sides. And I know that I don't know. I don't understand why that particular location has become so central to this. But just within days, we've seen the people on the Ukrainian side, the officials on the Ukrainian side, saying we're going to bring in reinforcements. So hold the line here. Why
the
is
problem
this?
is they aren't holding the line.
Yeah, they're talking about bringing in reinforcements, but I don't know how they do that.
Well, I did see a report from the Ukrainian side earlier today that said even if they bring reinforcements in, it means they're weakening the lines in other places. And then you will see significant inroads from Russia in those areas. So, they're really trying to fight with not enough guys to be able to hold all their lines. Now, Russia does dig in when they take an area, but they're advancing, digging in, advancing, digging in, advancing, digging in, whereas the Ukrainians are losing those footholds that they've created for the Russians to use. So
yeah, and I know that in Canada as well, we've seen just this week another story that they have a huge stockpile here of munitions, expired shells that are NATO standard that the Ukrainian military wants to get its hands on because they say don't destroy them, send them over to us, we'll blow them up over here. So
yeah, and it's interesting because Russia on a daily basis will put out announcements that they're going to destroy old munitions tomorrow at this time. So you hear this talk about how Russia is running out of missiles, they're running out of drones, they're running out of artillery shells, but they're destroying their old stockpiles, their old Soviet stockpiles. So they're getting their shells somewhere. We really do have a wartime economy here, and the manufacturers here are churning stuff out, a lot of stuff.
All right. Well, I think that kind of brings us up to date on this story. Kevin, is there anything you think we might have missed or that you need
Nope,
to add?
I don't think so. I'll kind of keep an eye on things over the next couple of days and let you know what I hear next.
All right. Kevin Michelizzi. And again, just tell people how they can find your work.
You can find me on YouTube at InfoWars Press.
Excellent. Kevin Michelizzi, thank you very much for all the
Thank
hard
you,
work.
Rick.
And this was, a huge story for Maverick News, thanks to you, because you were up at the earliest hours of the morning and on top of this story immediately. So we were one of the first organizations to get this information out. Thanks to you. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.
Maverick News. The world is watching.